and Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. If you've not gone, footballscoop.com is the, like, I say this to you all the time. You guys are so quick and glorious in the simplicity to get to news now, which is something that is lacking in sports websites, because if I go to like a big time one, I have to sift through a lot of stuff to find the thing I want. And so you guys are direct and right to the point, and I love it. I
appreciate that. Thank you. I'll say this to your audience will understand this. What Matt's step is for Texas high school football, we try to be for college football, from Alabama to Mary Hardin Baylor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely love it, Zach, and love having you on the show. So this is a fun week of games, starting out with Tech and Utah. There's a couple of these games this week. Michigan and Nebraska is one of them. The if not now, when is it going to be games? And not necessarily for Utah as much, although this is a big statement win for them in the Big 12 if they get it. But for Tech, this is one that they really would like to have to announce their presence with authority.
Yeah, I said earlier today on our Ticket podcast, and I'd love your opinion, Paul, if I'm wrong on this, but isn't this the biggest Tech game since they went to Oklahoma in November of 2008?
I think it's so. Probably up there, Zach. Yeah, and I hope this is a different outcome for them than that one, because that was really bad, man.
Man.
Yeah, it feels like it's a very big game for Tech in particular.
Yeah, I mean, you've been waiting as a fan base 17 years. This is what, year 4 under Joey? So you've been building for this for 4 years now, and this is where you expect to be, certainly where you've paid to be. And so now it's time to go prove it. And if they go and lose to Utah, 30-28 or something like that, then there's certainly no shame in that. There's going to be a whole lot of season ahead of them. But at the same time, Tech is the most accomplished Big 12 program that ever even played a Big 12 championship game. So there is a little bit of if not now win. And certainly the future is very bright for them moving forward. But you'd like to see proof in the pudding at some point. To draw another comparison, it seems similar to when Texas went on the road to Alabama in 2023. It was like, all right, we have a belief in the building that we can go win a game like this, but we actually have to go do it to prove it to ourselves and to the nation that we can. And as I wrote on Football Scoop, like, we see lots of irresistible force versus immovable object type games in college football, but never once in the history of the sport has the immovable object been a Texas Tech run defense. So I'm very excited to see how Utah runs the ball against this Tech front.
Yeah, I mean, we saw a stat from, I think it was Pro Football Focus, and like the top 4 guys were Texas Tech offseason acquisitions. Like, it was Romello Height, and it was Lee Hunter, and it was a couple of Skylar Gill Howard, and
Bailey
and David Bailey. And I remember them getting all those guys, but I was like, oh, geez, that wasn't one offseason, and that was only 4 of the guys, but they were all on that front or edge guys. And yeah, this is the game that you signed them up to go and win, not to go and place second and look good, but like to go beat them and to kind of maybe even do it with a little bit of authority.
Yeah, and credit to Tech and to that staff for nailing their evaluations. It's one thing to have a lot of money to spend, but we've seen a lot of programs spend it on the wrong guys. And so their investment so far has paid off, especially Romello Height's a guy that his 4th program in 5 years, something like that. Yeah. So there's a reason he got all those opportunities, and there's also a reason, kind of like Jadeveon Clowney on the Cowboys. There's a reason he's been around as long, but there's also a reason he's been on a different team every single year. So credit to Tech for getting that, and credit to Joey and his staff for getting their guys to buy in, because certainly there's got to be guys in that locker room that have poured 3-4 years of blood, sweat, and tears that aren't getting the same opportunities and the same rewards as some of these guys that got there just a few months ago. But so far, it hasn't seemed to hurt them. But they've been on the greens so far, and they're going to be on a double black diamond on Saturday morning.
So, Zach, one of the other, if not now, win games, Michigan at Nebraska. Nebraska, like, if you look at where Nebraska's roster is, they were where Michigan is now, theoretically, last year, except for the fact that they're rebuilding and Michigan was just kind of reshuffling after winning the national championship. But, true freshman quarterback, stud starting. Now, Dylan Raiola's in his second year. Is this the time where Nebraska can go get that, which would be the biggest win of Matt Rhule's career anywhere, going and doing this and beating Michigan if they can get it done?
Yeah, I certainly think there's a whole lot more pressure on Nebraska than Michigan, but I find it interesting that Michigan's favored on the road with a true freshman quarterback. I thought Bryce Underwood had more to offer than Michigan asked out of him at Oklahoma. Not to say that they were going to go win the game, because the way that game played out was they played that game 7 times out of 10. Oklahoma probably wins it by 17-20. Most of them, they won that one by 11. But I thought Sharon Moore played that more not to lose, not to get blown out, than actually win it. And it was interesting because Sharon Moore got that job because he was extremely aggressive, pushing his chips to the table over and over again in that Penn State and that Ohio State game. Now he's the head coach and he plays it more conservative. He's not going to be the head coach on Saturday for reasons we don't need to get into. But I like to see Michigan, if they go in to try to actually win the game instead of keeping it close, I think they can. I still think Nebraska's average at a lot of places, and might be including quarterback. Dylan Raiola's numbers look really good so far, but he had to throw like 44 times to get like 250 yards against Cincinnati. They were not efficient, not explosive in that game, and that's who this team is until proven otherwise to me. So I'm very interested to see how because you're absolutely right. It's time for Matt Rhule. If you can't beat the number 21 team at home with a true freshman quarterback as talented as he is and an interim head coach, what are we doing here?
So, Zach, you don't want to – I was hoping we were going to relitigate Michigan's scandal from day one and just go through story by story. No, none of us want to do that. Clearly, none of us want to do that. Man, it's you had an interesting going back to Tech versus Utah for a second. You had an interesting comment on that this week about the TV ratings and how the Big 12's not really hitting this 4 kind of million benchmark where you go like, oh, that's a good number. And you pointed out that their number with Colorado was nearly 3 million, but there's this very important, unique factor called Deion Sanders that plays into that as well. So do you feel like this Tech-Utah game's kind of a barometer check of where the interest level is nationally in the league?
Yeah, I think it's fair. Certainly, they're not going to shut down the conference, and Big 12 football will be extinct by Monday morning if it doesn't reach some arbitrary number or anything like that. But I am going to be interested to see the number, because I think you have 2 B-level brands. This isn't Georgia versus Alabama, but you're going to have an A-level scene. This would be a great football game, and the people of Utah love their Utah Utes. The Big Noon is traditionally not year after year, but for the last 2 years, it's the highest rated window. For a long time, that was the 2:30 CBS game, the SEC game on CBS. Now it's become Big Noon. Obviously, Ohio State and Michigan carry that more often than not, but it's the Big 12's turn to get a shot at it. And certainly it's in the clicker rotation for all of us at 11 a.m., no matter who's playing, what's on. So I think the hope is that you can attach some viewers and keep them with a compelling product, because the Big 12 football is a compelling, great product from week to week. So I'm certainly going to be rooting for it. I think if you're that 5-6 million, I think that's a win for the conference.
One more Big 12 game I want to ask you about before I have a couple of the kind of randos for you. But Arizona State and Baylor, both these teams are unranked, but they both lost Arizona State lost to a Mississippi State team that was as charged up early on in that game. They kind of got cowbelled out of it early. And then Baylor lost a game to Auburn, who is maybe the most improved team in the SEC over last year, potentially. This is not necessarily like the biggest mover and shaker game, but for either of these teams, this is kind of a key one if they want to stay in the race early on.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for Baylor. The vibes that Kenny Dillingham has put out is kind of that he hates this team and kind of wants them to get their butt kicked and say, "See, I told you so." And they fell behind, or obviously early at Mississippi State, and certainly part of that was probably Mississippi State ran out of gas after having so much energy, and also part of it was Arizona State's like, okay, now we're being pushed as hard as we can. Now we'll give it our full effort, and obviously they came back and made it interesting, but lost the game. And the joke of the Big 12 is every game's a 3-point spread, and Baylor's, the last I looked, was a 2.5-point favorite at home. But when you look at Baylor's schedule, I don't see a game they can't win. Not meaning they're going to win all of them, but there's ample opportunity for the Big 12 middle class for someone to rise up. You do get Utah at home, but your next two after this one are Oklahoma State and Kansas State, and those two are down bad to extremely bad. So there's a great opportunity for Baylor, for Dave Aranda to build some momentum, some belief within that locker room if they can play good enough defense to win on Saturday.
So over at Football Scoop, you guys talk games, but you talk like the big picture with a lot of stuff, including coaching news. And since we last talked to you, just a couple days after we last talked to you, UCLA moves on from Deshaun Foster. Virginia Tech moves on from Brent Pry. Kind of what do you feel like has been the general reaction and scuttlebutt about those jobs? Do you think one's clearly better than the other? And are you all surprised we're already getting the carousel kickstarted here before week 4?
The thing that surprises me is that there's a little bit of risk involved because obviously we're only 3 games into the season. And the portal opens within 30 days of any coaching change. So you have invited the opportunity for mass exodus and then a total catastrophe if guys start making business decisions, either to take red shirts or portal or both. And fortunately, that has not happened. So I'm grateful for that. But as for the product on the field, I mean, I don't know that it could get any worse for either team. You had UCLA hosted New Mexico on a Friday night before a crowd that was probably smaller than a La Vega crowd and got their butts kicked by New Mexico. And then the head coach of New Mexico was like, yeah, we're going to play better teams in the Mountain West. It just is what it is. And Virginia Tech was getting booed off the field by down 21-0, might have been 28-0 at home to Old Dominion. So certainly they felt like it was going to be worse before it got better. So the decision was made to move. I think there's more interest from what I've heard in Virginia Tech right now. Like there's some qualified guys that are circling around that job. UCLA, their issues are obvious. You have people asking if they even belong in the Big Ten. Should they beg their way back into the old Pac-12? The off-campus stadium is an issue and not changing anytime soon. So I think the next UCLA head coach needs to convince to people, including starting within your own university, why UCLA football matters. You convince that to the head coaches in California high school football. There's good junior college football out in California. You've got to really have contacts to work the portal because that team might go 0-12, even if Deshaun Foster had stayed. Virginia Tech, their AD Whit Babcock has said he opened the season basically by telling his board of regents, like, guys, we need multiple tens of millions of dollars invested in this program. Things are going to get much worse much quickly. But I think Virginia Tech, for one, you're in a contiguous conference. You're in a conference that makes sense, and for two, there's a lot more attainable players around you than there are, I think, at UCLA. Even though the fact that it is in Los Angeles, in case you guys hadn't heard.
Yeah. But if I'm UCLA, I don't need to look far to see like what my model should be if my biggest rival is USC and I don't know if they're even USC's biggest rival anymore, but like if you have that to compare to, you at least need to get close to what they're trying to do. And if you're not willing to do that, then you're not really willing to be a competitive team in the Big Ten before you even start talking about what Michigan or Ohio State or any of those teams are spending, right?
Yeah, I think the name that I threw out there was Kenya Matalolo, who spent a few months at UCLA as a director of leadership or something like that before taking the San Jose State job. Obviously knows the area well, long time from Hawaii, coached at Hawaii, UCLA, or played in California often, recruited in California often as the head coach at Navy, knows the Mountain West well, so let's just call it what it is, knows the players that would be good to poach from those rosters to build up UCLA. There's also probably a Pat Fitzgerald conversation to be had for everything. The conversation that's going to be around him, the guy knows how to be a big-time college head coach and to do so at an academic institution. So I would bet against those two guys. I'd bet on the field, but I think I'd have those conversations with those guys and then go from there.
Yeah, interesting to already see him get kicked up, and your site a great place to go to for a lot of the other moves that are going to happen, and obviously those searches as well. Being based in Dallas, does the Iron Skillet going away after this year bring a tear to your eye? Does it register at all? How do you feel about TCU SMU for the final time for at least a little while? Who knows how long coming up on Saturday?
Yeah, it's an interesting point that Sonny Dykes made, and I credit him for playing the role of the villain in this, and that TCU is just big brothering their way out by saying, like, look, no one nationally would care about this game if it wasn't the last one. And he's probably right. We would probably talk about it, but certainly no one outside of North Texas would probably care all that much. But the fact of the matter is, in all of our lifetimes, this rivalry's never been hotter. And I looked into this when he coached his first game for TCU against SMU, and I wasn't able to find another example of college football history of a coach leaving one rival for another. And certainly if an Auburn coach had ever left to go to Alabama, we would probably know about it. So I can't say that definitively, but I looked into it and I never found another answer. So obviously the last 20 years, or for a 20-year period, TCU absolutely dominated. The last 6 is 3-3. SMU hates TCU from top to bottom, so they want to see this game continue. So I am sad that it's going away. I'm not going to pretend that it's a top 15 rivalry, probably not even top 25 rivalry in college football, but it's football around here is better when SMU and TCU are playing. And then the other aspect of this that I haven't heard brought up is that it'd be one thing if TCU was going to leave SMU behind and go play a Florida State, a Miami, you name it. But their future non-conference games are against Stanford, Duke, Purdue. I guarantee you TCU fans would rather see SMU and rather go to SMU than play Duke, Purdue, and Stanford.
Yeah, that's true. Does Billy Napier have a job on Monday?
I think so, because I think Florida's going to win on Saturday.
Wow.
They've outplayed on a down-and-out basis. They outplayed South Florida. On a down-and-out basis, they outplayed LSU. They should have won both games. I think if DJ Lagway can just avoid the critical turnover, which his career touchdown interception ratio is 17-15, so that's a big if. But the defense and the running game are good enough to win you these games. Florida should be 3-0. I refuse to believe. I was one that thought this was a playoff team coming into the season. So I refuse to believe that they're going to go out with such a whimper. So I'm picking them to win.
All right. I'm not a believer, but
I understand. I hate my own pick, but I'm going with it.
Yeah. Look, Miami versus Florida is the hate bowl for me.
Can both teams lose, Paul?
Yeah,
that would be your choice.
Here's what I hope for. I hope everybody poops their pants. Like that's the ideal thing. It doesn't matter who wins or loses to me, just as long as whatever it is the most embarrassing thing that could happen to a human. Like, that's all.
But don't you think the idea of an undefeated Miami coming to Doak Campbell in a few weeks, isn't that exciting?
I'm fired up about that possibility. Yeah. No, I think that, look, I'll stick to this. The 90s were better when all three teams were good. I'll trade off any other thing. Here's the thing. I think if you really ask people this, would you rather lose to your rivals, trade blows and lose to your rivals? So, for FSU, that's Clemson, Miami, and Florida. Would you rather rotate through losing at one of those games every couple of years and then have a year where you win them all, but you're going to lose sometimes, and then never lose to anybody else? You're never going to lose to Wake Forest or NC State or anybody else. I would say, yeah, I'd take that over oh crap, we lost to UNC.
So you're one of those that does not believe by at all as long as we go we can go 1-11, but as long as we beat our rival in the 1, then it's a great season.
No. No, I'm one who, because I've been spoiled with national championships, the good seasons end with, and the other seasons end, and I don't remember them all that much. So,
yeah, I agree with you. I don't think anybody is really like that, but I guess Ohio State tested that theory they lost to Michigan and then won the national championship, and they'll be thinking about last season for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, they'll say, I'm sure there's a minority of people who just don't like Ryan Day. That's like, yeah, but we lost to Michigan, so it's not as good as the last one we beat them. Whatever. But Zach Barnett, footballscoop.com. Zach, we'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.